I didn't even put a trigger warning. Trigger warning, potential rape allegory. That's about it.
Welcome to Fucked Up Fables. If destroying your childhood is something that interests you, you've come to the right place. We just finished up our spooky month and thought, we've been destroying your childhoods, so why not destroy our own? So, for the month of November, our theme will be destroying our childhood. So, kicking off today's little adventure is Titania. So, what childhood story of yours are we destroying today?
The 12 Dancing Princesses.
I love
That's
it.
why I'm rocking the, I don't know if you can see it, but the princess glitter. It's pink body glitter because I felt princessy, I guess.
I have vague memories of this story. Vague.
Yeah, same. I also have very vague memories.
So did I. My memories were cheerful and lovely. I think most people have heard the story. You have the 12 princesses. They sneak out every night to dance, and no one knows why or how because they're always locked in. And then some oh-so-clever commoner comes along and figures out the riddle, marries a princess, and eventually becomes king, and everyone lives happily ever after. That's the story I know.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right?
You can become a king if you just marry a princess.
You gotta solve the riddle first. That's
to be a smart commoner, at least.
Yeah, because the princes apparently just suck at this.
Well.
So originally, I thought it would be fun to look into the different versions of this story because I, for some reason, assumed my version was like a legitimate version, like that was the common one, and that I would find little fucked up versions along the way. But my exploration took me down a very unexpected road. Originally, like I said, I thought there was this lighthearted version, the one I briefly described, and then the Grimm version, which is what I thought I was remembering, something about like cursed shoes and dancing on fire, I don't know, in front of a demon on fire or something. I couldn't remember. I thought that was the Grimm version. However, I was apparently mixing up that the Hans Christian Andersen story, Red Shoes. At least I think, because I did not go back and reread the whole thing, but it did not sound pleasant.
No, it's terrifying. She has to cut off her feet in the end to stop them from dancing, and then the shoes continue dancing with her feet inside of them.
That is horrifying. Okay, so that's a bit more gruesome.
I think there's a Supernatural episode about that.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite fairy tales.
And I kind of regret not going down that road because that sounds really interesting.
It is a fucked up story.
I could tell you some stories about cutting off feet.
You could. Maybe we need a Red Shoes episode that has like stories from you in the end.
Real life amputation stories.
Yeah, real life
fairy tales.
We'll describe the fairy tale and then be like, so Vi, is this realistic?
I'll be your medical check.
There we go. So I think that's something we'll get into another time. Put a pin in it because that sounds like an excellent revisit. But so I went down looking for through the books that I had, looking for the story that I remembered because I was going to start out with reading that story or giving a synopsis and then going down the Grimm version. But strangely enough, the version I wound up finding was more fucked up than the Grimm version. And that was really surprising to me.
Do you know who wrote the other version?
The like standard fairy tale version was way more fucked up than the Grimm version.
But do you know like where it came from or who wrote it originally?
France. It came from France. Like the Conrads.
Why? It's always the French.
I'll get there. But do you guys remember Scholastic books?
Yeah.
Like in school.
The golden ones or like the Scholastic book fair?
The book fair where you could like get the little order form every once in a while at school. So that's where my version came from that I grew up with. We purchased a set of these like little thin soft cover books. It had The Princess and the Pea was one, 12 Dancing Princesses, really short stories for children. And it's a lovely little tale in that version. So I was searching for the one closest to that since I no longer have those books. And I decided to pull out my, it's the Beauty and the Beast anthology from the second episode that I did, which contains Andrew Lang's Fairy Books of Many Colors. And I found the story in the Red Fairy book, which I guess makes sense. The colors of the books don't actually mean anything, but red always seems kind of evil, so it kind of
I
fits.
thought it meant something. I was like, oh, that's why it
It's
makes
my
sense.
favorite color.
Yeah. Huh?
Really?
Oh, I said red is my favorite color.
Well,
I did not know that.
Here's your first story from the Red Fairy book. I think it might also be called the Crimson one, but that might be a separate one, and I literally can't remember right now.
I feel like crimson is just better red.
Better red. It's a better
That's why
name too than red.
technically my wedding colors are crimson and silver.
Mm.
Yeah, but it's really just fancy better red.
I
So,
don't remember what the red in my wedding was called.
can we say that you're having a red wedding then?
You could say that, but I would appreciate you not murdering all of the guests.
I mean,
well-
Lynn's heart. Come on now. She doesn't die. She comes back.
I mean, she's
Not
definitely dead.
in the
Just
television.
Just because
I know.
she comes back doesn't
I
mean that
hate
she's not
her
dead.
character so much, and I was both glad that she ends in the TV series, but then I was also upset that she doesn't come back as Lady Stoneheart. I was like, why? Why did you just cut this whole character?
Because the writers screwed the whole thing up.
They said they claim it was a ripple effect. Like they changed one little thing, and those little things kind of add up to big things.
Right, and I think that one was like they considered it not important to the core storyline, but
Yeah,
I
there's-
still can't forgive them for season 8. So
Yeah,
I
that's
haven't
fair.
seen it.
I just essentially write them off. They should never have another job in Hollywood again.
Well,
Anyway,
it's
12 Dancing Princesses.
Yeah, I was gonna say it boils down to because there was actually a lot of characters that they didn't include that were relevant but not relevant enough, and they were like, oh, okay, well these characters no longer have an active role in the main storyline, and we're only focusing on the main storyline.
Yeah.
Because one of my
I mean,
favorite
makes
characters
sense.
from the books is called Balwas, and he's not in the show at all.
What
Still
book did
haven't
he
read
come
them.
in?
The second, I think.
I don't recognize the name, that's why I was curious. But I have
Are we gonna have to do a Game of Thrones complaint episode? I can just keep putting in like the little snippet of one of the writers going, "She forgot. We forgot." Just every time we're mad at them, just slip that in.
If we're gonna thrash on any writer first, it has to be Man Eyes.
Who?
Man Eyes?
I'm not understanding that word.
I don't know how you're not getting it.
I'm hearing man eyes.
Ran ice.
Oh my god! I'm like, man eyes? Who is man eyes?
That is officially her new name, Man
I
Eyes.
just watched.
We gotta trash man eyes.
I just watched Interview with the Vampire again, and reminded myself why I love that movie and why I don't want to read the book.
You have to bleep it out now because you said it.
Bleep. Don't have sound. Anyway, so I decided, back to the story, so I decided to, rather than doing a comparison, I just decided to go over the story that I found, which again was from Andrew Lang's Red Fairy book, because I thought that was pretty fucked up, and it really destroyed the story for me, and my fluffy childhood memory is now dead and gone.
Wow.
To answer your question, the Red Fairy book was published somewhere between like 1868 and 1904. I think that's the breadth of when these books came out, and I just don't know where along that timeline it was published. I had it pulled up once and just didn't retain that information.
Forgot
So,
now.
interestingly enough, the story is broken up into 16 chapters. Each section or chapter is only a couple paragraphs long. It's a little weird because most fairy tales aren't broken up in that way. But like side note, I think there should have been 12 Dancing Princesses, 12 chapters. It just freaking makes sense. Anyway, so that's my complaint. That's my main complaint was the format. Anyway, so the story begins with not with the princesses, but with our hero, who is a young French boy from a village called Montigny-sur-Roc. Correct me on my French pronunciation if you need to. You do, because it's been a while. This is a real place. It's a legitimate real place. I Googled it and I found it on the map. It is one of the few fairy stories that actually has a real definite location. Like, it is there. And it's also interesting to note that our hero actually has a name, which is something that's usually left off of fairy tales as well. Usually your hero is your everyman, and the princess is, a princess. But our hero's name is Michael, nicknamed Stargazer, because, and I quote, when he drove his cows over the commons to seek for pasture, he went along with his head in the air, gaping at nothing.
So he was basically a chicken. Who, they run around with their head tilted up, and that's how they drown.
Our hero is a chicken.
But not like in the fear sense, like in the literal I just stare at the sky sense.
Except he says he's staring at nothing, which makes me think that he's not even looking at the sky. He's just there.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's a chicken, which is totally not what I expected.
I was gonna say, I don't actually know if chickens do that, because I've never seen a chicken do that, and I've
Just
had a
make it
fair
up.
amount of experience with chickens.
Can't. All I can think is Star-Lord, and I'm like, I'm done with this already.
So anyway, we start off learning about Michael's interest or lack of interest in the ladies around him, and he is only focused on his work, tending the cows, and I guess staring out into the middle distance like a chicken. Apparently, he thought all the women in his town were super ugly and poor, well beneath his dead-eyed standards. No, he only wanted a princess, because apparently that's what this cowboy deserves. And honestly, he seems like kind of a dick.
Yeah,
Just
no
right
shit.
off the bat.
Bust his kneecaps.
Bust his kneecaps. Maybe he'll look down then, I don't know. So...
That was a good one.
So one day he has a dream where he is given the direction to go to the castle of Boliel, where he will find a princess to marry. And after telling the entire town of this dream, for some reason he is relentlessly mocked for it.
Well, it's because he's a
Imagine why.
chicken. He's a chicken,
Because he
and they
looks
know
like
he
a
doesn't
chicken.
deserve a princess.
Yeah, well, he goes to bed the next night, and the dream comes to him again. It's a lady in the dream. I didn't think it was that super important, but there's a lady in his dream. Again, he tells everyone in the town who makes fun of him, and for some reason comes to the conclusion that if it happens a third time, then he's got to go to Boliel. And that's literally what happens. The story literally describes him leaving town with the entire, population behind him, just laughing as he disappears into the sunset.
They're like, finally, we have gotten rid of him.
Right, and he is insane, and he's probably going to die out there because he's not looking where he's going. Maybe he'll walk off a cliff.
That's the problem.
Right.
I swear, as God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
I mean, it's kind of like falling with style, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
So then the story shifts to explain that there's a castle in Boliel, and it contains the 12 princesses. And apparently it is super well known that they are as perfect as a fairy tale princess could be, except for this really nasty flaw that somehow their shoes, their satin shoes, are worn through every night, even though they're bolted into their room. So everyone knows about this weird thing. And of course, they always say that they're sleeping, and no one can explain why their shoes are always worn out, which I think is crazy because my first thought is their feet must really stink. Must be burning holes in their shoes.
Wow.
But no.
Foot stink can be
No.
a genetic thing too.
There you go.
So it would kind of make sense if they all had the same foot stink.
Right. But no, the king is convinced, king or duke, it's kind of interchangeable, is convinced that they must be sneaking out somewhere. So apparently, he invites all the princes in the land to come and try and solve the mystery. And if they solve the mystery, they get to marry whichever princess they want. So several princes come to try and solve it, but by the morning of their first night, they vanish, and no one has any idea what happened to them. So far, this is all kind of along the same path of what I remember. So the story flips back to Michael. He comes to the castle and applies to be a gardener. It turns out that that's exactly what they needed for some reason, and they hire him literally because he's pretty.
They want some eye candy for their garden.
Come be my pretty gardener.
Yeah, only pretty things can tend to pretty things, I guess.
That's fair.
Anyway.
That's a valid assessment.
I should have been a fairy tale author. I fit right in with their morals. So his first task the next morning is to give a bouquet to each of the princesses. He does this, he's supposed to do this every morning. Like, that is his first task of the day. These damn spoiled princesses literally wake up every day to a fresh bouquet handed to them as they leave the bedroom. Fun fact, if you know your history, this would be because they need to hide their stench. Just so you know. Because it was quite common for people back...
stinky ass feet.
Right? And it was quite common for people back in the day to carry around a peeled orange, like that was attached to a ribbon, or flowers to hide the world's stenches and cover up your own. So apparently the princesses, they would take their bouquets without even looking at the gardener, except the youngest princess, who weirdly enough is also given a name. It's Lena. And she notices that this guy is pretty. I guess that's why you hire a pretty gardener. You should hire an ugly gardener if you don't want your princesses frolicking with the help.
That's fair. You should be a fairy tale author.
See? Anyway, it turns out that the princesses are also total douchebags. They make fun of their youngest sister in front of the gardener and essentially tell her that princesses cannot stoop to the low levels of gardeners. And I quote, "A princess ought never to lower herself by looking at a garden boy." Really lovely ladies. Lovely ladies.
I mean, in that time period, though, like, that was a thing.
Still douchey. Just because it happened back then doesn't mean it's okay. But to be fair, if you think about it, he's kind of a dick and they're douches, so it fits.
Ha. Ha ha.
Yeah. And he just got it.
You know what?
Anyway.
Blonde, okay, like.
So the notice of Lena makes Michael want to try and solve the mystery of the worn out shoes. He's afraid he'll get fired or made fun of relentlessly if he just tries. But lo and behold, a dream comes to him again and tells him to plant a cherry laurel and a rose laurel in 2 large pots and wait for them to be about the average height of a 15-year-old girl.
Won't that take forever?
So,
yeah, I feel like it would.
I will get there. So once they've reached that height, he has to say to the laurels, "My beautiful laurel, with the golden rake I have raked you, with the golden bucket I have watered you, with the silken towel I have wiped you." And then he can ask the laurels for anything that he wants, and they will give it to him. And there you go. Those are your instructions to grow your own plant, genies. I really hope someone tries because I'm curious.
So I'm gonna need someone to get me some lore holes.
Right. I'm
Cherry
like
lemon,
already plotting. Can I plant more than one? Can I have multiple?
potentially. Multiple
Can
plant
I
genies.
wish? Can I wish for more plant genies?
If you do, wish for plant genies that are already about the height of a 15-year-old girl, so you don't have to wait for them to grow.
That's fair.
Weirdly enough, though, when he wakes up, he has all of these items next to him. He has the laurels, the rake, the bucket, everything he needs to plant these laurels. And that is what he does. I have lost one. Oh, and apparently the laurels grow super fast. Like in a few days, they're at the right height. And this nut muffin asks them to teach him how to become invisible. That's his first wish. How do I become invisible? And the laurel gives him a flower that allows him to become invisible. So he decides he's going to creep on our lovely princesses. So
Because he's not a stalker at all.
he's not a stalker.
I have a
And
question.
yes,
Why wouldn't he just wish for one of them to marry him?
because he's not that smart.
Maybe
He
they
goes
have
about this
genie rules. Because, like, that's the rule for genie. It's one of the 3 rules. You can't make someone fall in love with you.
I didn't say fall in love. I said marry, and there is a very big
True.
difference.
Very true.
That would end the fairy tale. And
Touché.
I mean, yeah, period. The end. We're done. No moral.
Moral
Moral
is
is
get yourself a laurel and do all the things that you said to do.
So actually, everything seems somewhat what I remember. I don't remember them ever talking about laurels in the childhood story. But this is where it starts to get a little sideways. So this guy, invisible, sneaks into the princess's bedrooms and hides under one of their beds, where he literally watches them undress. He stays there all day and watches them change clothes. And, like, he thinks this is okay. This is not okay. That some of these girls, I think, are, like, really young. Because there's 12. Like, think of the timeline here. There's got to be some under 10. I bet the youngest.
Yeah, but the
10.
youngest one is the one that thought he was really pretty. So
She only stopped to say hi. That doesn't mean that gives a peeping Tom permission.
oh no, I'm not saying that he has permission. I'm just saying like they might be like, you know, between the ages of like 14 and 22 or whatever. 26.
It's a lot of birthing.
Yeah. Maybe
So
some were
anyway.
adopted.
But I don't know. In this world, that seems below them.
Or
That's
twins.
They do talk about their royal blood being so pure that they would obviously be able to tell that there's a pea under their mattress.
I would also like to point out that if their blood is so pure, it obviously means that they had some dead babies in between, because that incest ain't going to give you 12 babies right off the bat.
We're just gonna like put a pin in that as another layer to this story.
Right, like they could have had multiples, you know.
Anyway.
Sure, let's. The logistics of having 12 children in 6 years. I'm assuming the youngest is 15. Like,
it
that
makes me feel better if she's at least,
right.
At least 15.
And that was like the height of the laurel, so it just kind of, I don't know, maybe the dream pulled it out of nowhere, but it seems oddly specific. Anyway, so this guy, he sits there and stares at these young girls as they change, revealing his true colors as a creepster. And then apparently, later in the night, the princesses clap their hands and a trapdoor opens in the floor and they leave, and of course he follows. This passage takes them to a clearing in the wood where every tree is encrusted with jewels. There's a lake in the middle of this clearing with 12 boats, and the princesses each get into one, with Michael sneaking into Lena's. And to Lena's credit, she is super suspicious from the beginning, because apparently Michael wound up stepping on her dress, so she was convinced someone was behind her, and then her boat was moving slower than it had any other time before, and that was because of Michael's added weight, but her sisters essentially called her stupid and told her to shut up.
Yeah, as older sisters do.
I mean, yeah, sure.
As somebody who has lots of older sisters.
Okay,
I wouldn't
so
know.
that's not a character. On the other side of the lake was another castle, and on the shore were 12 princes. Essentially, an heir, a spare, and 10 more, if you guys know the rhyme. An heir, a spare, an heir, and a. There's a rhyme that's an heir and a spare. Like, so like if you're royalty, you have a son, and then you have a second son, because in case the first son dies, you have a spare. Well, in this case, there's an heir, a spare, and 10 more. That was my thought. Yeah. So the royals then enter the ballroom with Michael trailing behind, and they literally dance the night away, all freaking night. And Michael creeps in the corner and just watch and is constantly drooling over Lena, describing very oddly this girl that I'm assuming is very young because she's the youngest of 12. But it goes into a little bit of detail about, her heaving breasts and whatnot. And everything kind of like still was following the fairy tale I knew, but this is where it takes the hard left turn. So the ballroom is filled with all of the princes who tried to discover the princess's secret. So there were more than 50 princes in this ballroom, 50 missing people all in this ballroom. And apparently, the princesses drugged these men and stored them in this random castle that they found so that they could dance with them every night. But the worst part is, the drug literally froze their hearts. These lovely, lovely princesses gave some sort of potion to 50 princes that froze their heart and leaves them with only the desire to dance. I don't remember that story.
I don't remember that story either, and I could do without the desire to dance bit, but if I could get some heart freezing potions.
But yeah, so this seems a little evil.
Yeah.
And this is why my pretty princess makeup I was doing earlier took a hard turn into sort of dark witchy makeup, because I kept thinking about the fact that there are 12 princesses drugging random people and storing them in a room forever.
I mean, they're not random people.
I'm sorry, they're princes. We're fine.
You don't drug the garden boy, you drug the prince, as we've established.
Wouldn't
the garden
that
boy
be
is
worse?
beneath my drugs.
Princes will go missing and people will notice. Garden boys probably won't be noticed.
Yeah, but garden boys are beneath my drugs. My drugs are more expensive than the garden boy.
That is true. And I have to repeat from earlier, this is not the Grimm's version. Like, this is the standard fairy tale in your plain old children's book version, where princesses are literally drugging and kidnapping men, freezing their fucking hearts, and storing them in a castle so they can dance with them every night. This actually kind of sounds like rape culture, weirdly enough.
I'm just gonna go with, they're like, going back to my episode, a bunch of Onibabas, and they're just people.
And then my question is this Rohypnol? Like, are they ODing them on Rohypnol?
I mean, that doesn't freeze your heart.
I mean, it will if you take too much. You'll die.
Yeah, but you aren't left with a pure desire for dance.
Magic. I have no explanation.
What's the drug that you take that like makes you forget everything, but like you're really susceptible to like what people say, so like you'll do just about anything? It's the date rape drug.
Rohypnol.
Oh, is that what it is? I didn't know you OD on that.
I know a few others if you're interested.
No, let's not talk about that. Rohypnol is something you can easily overdose on. It happens fairly often when people use it because if you think about it, the rapist isn't like measuring out the appropriate amount for your body weight and your temperament.
That's true.
Dumping it in some alcohol or whatever and giving it to somebody. So anyway, the princesses, though, are kind of the rapists in the story, I'm just saying. I feel like dancing, if this was written in a different time, dancing would mean something else.
That's possible, but maybe they just really like DDR.
In this story, yes. But I still find it quite interesting that this is not the Grimm version. Anyway, so when the rooster crows 3 times, everyone stops and a feast is brought out for everyone by, and this was another lovely surprise for me, the feast was brought out by African slaves, which again was in a children's story. Yeah, African slaves. These princesses are fucking drugging people, kidnapping them, and enslaving people.
And endorsing
Royalty.
slavery.
Royalty.
Yeah, classic royalty.
Yeah. And so, like, the princesses have African slaves working in their hidden castle. So you can probably suspect that they were also drugged and kidnapped.
But
But
just like family slaves or something, like the princes, maybe the prince's slaves, like the 12 that are not drugged.
it doesn't go into it, but the story makes it a point to talk about the ethnicity and skin color of the servants. Like they don't specifically call them slaves, but based on the time period and the location and the fact that he went into such detail of using words that I don't think are okay to say in this day and age. I mean, we'll call it what it is, right? So, and I don't think that we should sugarcoat that the original story talks about slavery, especially since white people often gloss over history or other stories to be like they're willing servants or whatever. We're not gonna hide that fuckery here.
Yeah, no, they were just racist.
They were just racist and they enslaved people. So these are our fairy tale princesses that we base Disney movies off of.
Yeah. Well,
there's also a Barbie movie based off this one.
I was just getting ready to go. Is there a Disney movie based off of this? I did not know that there was a Barbie movie.
There's Barbie, and I'm pretty sure there's like a Disney short from ages ago based on this. I could be wrong. But either way, there are children's stuff based on this.
Right.
So, interestingly enough, the food that they brought out were candied flowers and leaves, which apparently is the obvious favorite of it's the obvious favorite food of all princesses for some reason. But I will tell you, so they describe like candied roses and candied violets. I've had those and they're actually really delicious.
But why would you eat leaves?
Weeds?
Leaves. You said leaves.
You said leaves.
Oh no, this says flowers and leaves, but I've actually had candied roses and candied violets.
I know, but I'm saying, why would you eat the leaves? What, like, just stick with the candy flowers. What the fuck are the leaves for?
I mean, you could candy a tea leaf. I don't know. It described leaves.
Yeah, it sounds gross. I'm with that.
I highly recommend candied violets. Like, if you get an opportunity, it is absolutely delicious.
I like spinach, but...
Yeah, I might have to pass on that one, but we'll see, should the opportunity ever arise.
After everyone ate, the princesses return home and leave the princes there to do whatever it is that they do during the day. On the way back, Michael was actually smart and decided to break off a branch from one of the jeweled trees as proof that he was there. And like they don't describe the bark actually looking like something, but it's probably gold encrusted or whatever to make it look different. So everyone goes to bed, and the next day, Michael places that branch in Lena's bouquet. And Lena, like, notices it, but she doesn't say anything, and she goes about her day. And then, when they go through the whole routine again that night, Michael invisibly stalks the princesses again and snaps another branch on his way out. Interestingly enough, Lena realizes that Michael's been spying on them because of the branch in her bouquet, but she doesn't actually do anything about it. The next day, the new branch is in her bouquet, and she's just like, whatever. But then at some point in time, it eventually boils over, and she pulls Michael aside, and she's like, dude, you're stalking me. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, can you, like, not tell anybody? And he goes, nah, it's fine. And she goes, I'll give you gold. And he takes the gold and throws it on the ground. And he's like, you cannot buy my silence. Because apparently he's above bribery, but stalking and creeping in girls' rooms, totally cool.
You have to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah.
You gotta have your standards. You gotta have them. But essentially, the conversation goes nowhere, and he just kind of storms off in a huff because he's rather offended that she tried to bribe him. So Lena's sisters notice that she was talking to such a lowly person, and they make fun of her again, which causes her to be spiteful to Michael. But she doesn't say anything about it until eventually, I guess the teasing gets enough, and she tells her sisters the truth, that Michael knows their secret. So the eldest princess does what every princess will do, and decides that the only way to solve this problem and continue to hide their crime is by throwing Michael in the dungeon. And I really love that the author describes this action as literally what all beautiful princesses do to get rid of people who know too much. Like,
admittedly, I was going to say that's actually better than I thought it was going to be, because as if I was a beautiful princess and I wanted somebody's permanent silence, I would not just throw them in the dungeon.
Right, their time gone.
True, but when you think about this in the context of this is a fairy tale given to like 3-year-olds, and you compare it to the stuff that we are used to, like compare it to the whitewashed version, that's still pretty harsh. Princesses don't do that in American fairy tales. Princesses are above harming people. They forgive people, and everyone loves them for it. But these princesses, fuck no. You either get kidnapped and spirited away with some sort of rape allegory, or you get thrown in the dungeon.
Yeah,
potentially starved to death.
This proves my point that Garden Boy is not good enough to be drugged and danced with.
I mean, yeah, apparently, because I guess they could have just spirited him away too.
I was gonna say, even though he's pretty, he's still just a garden boy.
And maybe it's his looks that save him. I don't know. But I would like to know how many crimes outside of 50 plus kidnappings these princesses are hiding. How many people have they put in that dungeon? Anyway, so Lena decides to go rogue and threatens to tell the king their secret. Makes this threat to her sisters. And if the other, she does this to protect Michael. So essentially she says, I'm going to go tell our dad what we're doing if you harm Michael. And in the end, they come to the conclusion that he should be given this sort of test, where essentially they'll take him to the ball and they will give him a drink. And it turns out this is the same drink that enchanted all of the others. And if you pass the test, I guess no dungeon. It didn't actually say what the outcome would be.
So wait,
but I'm assuming no dungeon.
What is the test? Him taking this drink?
Yeah, so take him to the palace, dance with him all night, and give him a drink. And if he drinks, I guess he fails. And if he doesn't drink, he wins. But they don't actually say what happens either way.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So in the original story, the one from my childhood, this drink is a test given like every night. But I don't really remember, because I do remember a drink, but I don't really remember anything else about it. But anyway, but in true creep fashion for our lovely hero, he was spying on them the whole time, because I'm pretty sure he literally spends day and night in their room watching them versus, actually doing gardening things, which is his job. Yeah. So he hears their plan. And, but an interesting twist to this, he decides that he's in love with Lena. And because of that, even though he knew what the drink contained, he decided he was going to drink it anyway so that he wouldn't disturb Lena's happiness.
Oh, that's kind of sweet.
Yeah, so recap so far. Guy comes to castle, obsesses over the youngest girl, invisibly stalks them every night, determines he's in love, and will now sacrifice himself for her. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's the plot to Netflix's You. Just saying.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
I watched a few episodes. It's creepy.
I think that's the plot.
Yeah, because he convinces himself that he's in love with the person that he's stalking, and he puts himself in danger by murdering people to protect her. Yeah.
I don't know if I want to watch this.
So we can officially say Netflix's You is based off the 12 Dancing Princesses. So Michael, just rather than maybe looking for an antidote or asking for something to absorb the poison or whatever it is, he decides to ask the Laurels to dress him like a prince so that he can go to the ball.
Aww.
So he doesn't ask for a solution, he just asks for pretty clothes. And of course, they give him a flower, and when he puts the flower in his lapel, boom, prince. So he goes to the ball with the princesses. Lena dances with him all night and decides she too is in love with Michael, because of course. But her sisters are manipulating the situation. So her sisters keep sort of dragging him away, feeding him, trying to get him drunk, and they try to manipulate him with constant flattery and whatnot. So they are actively trying to, as the story said, turn his head so that he will just drink the drink without any hesitation. And apparently, my thought is this is what they did to everybody else. Flatter them, flash them a little maybe, I don't know, get them all turned on, and then give them a drink, and they just down it like it's nothing. And then they're forever enslaved with a frozen heart. Yay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what
Is that the plot to Frozen?
If I was gonna try to enslave people.
Yeah, so Onibaba, I'm convinced. Yeah. They're not eating livers, but
that's the next step, you know?
It truly is.
They're on their way to being Onibabas.
Yeah.
Onibabas in development.
Right? They have to reach that karma level. So they have to do something so horrific that they become Onibabas.
They just don't seem like fairy tale princesses. They seem more like the Wicked Witch in stories. So they keep trying to turn this gardener's head, but apparently for some reason, this guy that would walk around gaping at the sky staring at nothing is way too smart for 12 princesses, or I guess 11, because I don't think Lena is really taking part of it. So he's too smart for the royal witches, and he realizes what they're trying to do, so he doesn't let anything intoxicate him. So finally, when they decide to toast Michael, or do a toast to Michael, it's with that potion or whatever it is. And he takes it, and he is about to willingly drink it. He knows exactly what it is. He doesn't care. But our little Lena decides that even though he's, in my opinion, I'm pretty sure that there's been some grooming going on that's not really discussed in the story, but she decides to stop him by shouting, no, don't drink it. And I guess the potion needs to be consumed every night to keep everybody else under the spell, because when she shouts that, Michael sort of tosses the drink over his shoulder like, oh God, and it's so startling, her shout, that the princes hesitate and don't drink from their cups, and that's when the spell is broken for everyone.
So wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
So the 12 princes that they dance with that meet them there also have to drink this? Or
all 50 princesses drink it every night. You find out when they go to do this toast that they give the cups to everybody in the room, and this, they don't really say it, but my conclusion from reading it is that the princes had to drink this toast every night, because as soon as the second is past a 24-hour mark, the spell's broken.
Okay, so the 12 that they dance with.
Oh, there's 50.
But I thought there were 12 that
right.
Them.
There was the heir, the spare, and 10 more that met them on the shore.
On the lake, but every night they switched them out for others. There's 50 total in the ballroom every night, and they dance with all of them, but 12 of them would meet them at the shore every day.
Okay. I thought that it was just the same 12, and they just had these other 50, so I got real confused.
No,
I have another question.
Yeah.
Where the fuck are they getting this potion?
Baba Yaga?
I think that's a question I asked. Where are they getting it? Who's making it? What's in it? How did they learn to do this?
And how do they assure that their cups do not contain this potion?
I have an answer. I have a legit answer for this. Because they talk about having black slaves. and it's, I guess, more prevalent in like American culture, but black slaves were considered at one point, thanks Salem, to be in somewhat related to like witchcraft. So they could be the witches making the potion or whatever, and then there'd be the ones that would hand out the cups. So
Or maybe
Yeah,
they deal
if
with
I
Baba
was a
Yaga.
slave, though,
Yeah.
I think I would poison my master.
You know, a lot of people have that thought when it comes to slavery, but the punishment often for harming your master was that every slave was then killed, regardless of guilt. So a lot of times
Right.
they didn't poison or kill or lash out against the master to protect everyone else.
Well, right. But like in this particular story, there's only 12 of them, and it's literally a secret hidden castle. So like, if they just gave the all 12 princesses the potion, then they're
But
free.
what if the slaves were given another potion that only gave them the desire to serve? I'm just it doesn't go into it and it leaves the door open for so much speculation.
I was
But-
gonna go more with the whole like the way that when people are like, why don't you just leave an abusive relationship? And it's like that's not how that works. So that's kind of what I think when people are like, well, why didn't the slaves just leave? That's not how that works.
No,
It's just-
Also, we don't know.
it's
Is
just
the
like
castle underground? Are they held in some sort of creepy magic underground prison? We have no idea. Where is
that's
this
fair.
castle and why does no one else know it exists?
I was gonna say it is specifically in this story that I'm like,
Yeah.
but why?
You know, maybe they're getting paid really well.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Like a roof to sleep in and food to eat every night is a
really
pretty
well.
well. Yeah, I was gonna say a roof over your head and food every day is not necessarily a terrible thing.
I don't know. It's in France, so maybe
have
that's
good
just
food.
everything. I have no idea.
They had nowhere better to go because it's in fucking France.
That's fair.
So,
We're gonna go with.
anyway, so Michael tosses a drink over his shoulder. The shout makes all the other princes in the room like hesitate from drinking, and that hesitation breaks the spell. My thought is it's a time thing. That's my thought. Like
Midnight, you know, stroke of
Makes sense.
midnight.
Yeah, that makes sense.
something. Yeah. So, but weirdly enough, like if you were under a spell for whoever knows how long, wouldn't you be mad when you came out of it or afraid of the people who put you under that spell? Like,
Unless you don't
didn't know.
remember.
Yeah, I was
they
gonna say,
remember.
Oh.
Because what happens is Michael falls at Talena's feet, like, just like falls to the ground, I guess grabs her feet because he's like, oh my god, you do love me. And all the other princes in the room also fall to the ground, bowing to the princesses. Which I guess makes sense if you're terrified, right? But the princesses then just choose a husband amongst the others. And that's that.
Wait.
Yes! The men that they drugged and cursed. They just said, nah, you'll be my husband now. Chose one and walk away. And all the others are like, well, I guess we tried.
I mean, I feel like all of the others are like, whew, I lucked out. And the ones that they picked are like, mother
It's true.
effer.
Because they didn't fight over each other to be chosen. So,
I have
Yeah.
a question. I don't understand.
I don't understand either. This is pretty messed up.
yeah.
I
You
don't
might
like
say
it.
a fucked up fable.
Yeah, my brain just can't wrap around
There's a little more,
Indra.
just so you know.
this whole thing. Alright.
So, the 12 princesses and their 12 suitors go to the king and explain everything that happened. And the king decides to let the gardener choose amongst his daughters for, you know, like which one he wants to be his bride, even though the girls are there with their chosen spouses. Like, okay. But of course, the gardener chooses Lena, the youngest princess. No one questions what happens to the princes. No one says a word. Like, the king isn't like, you've been drugging and kidnapping 50 people. This is the problem. Nope, story just moves on. It's never spoken of again. So,
Princesses do
before
what they
the
want.
apparently. Before the marriage, Lena asks Michael again how he discovered their secret. So he shows her the laurels and explains the whole thing. And this is probably my favorite quote out of the whole thing. And I quote, like a prudent girl, thinking they gave him too much advantage over his wife, cut them off at the root and threw them in the fire. Seems perfectly reasonable.
I mean, I would do the same if I were her.
I
would
get
just
it.
use them.
Why would you not keep plant genies? They give you whatever you want.
Right, but you would have to somehow prevent anyone else from using them.
It's true. But I just love that, like a prudent girl, destroys plants.
I'll set fire to the rain.
It seems. Also, fun side note, why does everything I read have throwing something onto the fire? We have throwing babies onto the fire.
That was me.
Why are we throwing babies on the fire?
Oh, that's in the Changeling episode.
Oh yeah, that was in the Changeling, yeah.
Okay.
You guys get cannibalism, I get throw everything and burn it all. That's what I get. Set it on fire.
Hercules, Vi, if you have not listened to the Tale of Hercules.
That's in there too.
There are children thrown into a fire.
Either way, I really enjoyed that quote. And it just, I don't know, it seemed like a little violent way to start off a new marriage. But there's a fun side note. So this story is supposedly the inspiration for a French children's song, which Inky Doo is apparently familiar with.
Yeah.
Which the story actually does mention. I will probably butcher this because, again, it's been a while, but nous n'irons plus à boire, les laurels sont coupés. Is that close?
I'd have to see it. We learned it in French, but I don't remember how it goes.
So it's kind of a lengthy song. Those are the first two lines, and it translates to, we'll go to the woods no more, the laurels have been cut. So, and that is literally in the book, and it's really funny because, like, literally, they didn't translate it. I have the phonetic above it, by the way. Didn't translate it. I don't know. I thought that was really cute, and apparently in the way I guess it began, with the country girl singing the song and dancing in the summer by the light of the moon. So that's the 12 Dancing Princesses, the normal story, I guess, the standard fairy tale version. My conclusion was, because they talked about this song, I was wondering if this was maybe one of the inspirations for the phrase, don't rest on your laurels. Do I know that's typically attributed to, like, ancient Greek or Roman? I always get them mixed up. They wore the laurel crown, and, you know, like, the laurel is like a symbol of birthright or something. I don't know. But an interesting thought. Don't rest on your magic laurels.
I think it's Roman, because I think it's supposed to symbolize, could be wrong, don't quote me on this, I think it's supposed to be the Roman equivalent of Athena and olive branch.
I know they were given at, like, the Olympics.
Yeah.
When you would win, that would be your, like, trophy, and you'd wear it. Which is why it's like, it's kind of like, don't rest on your gifts or skills, or I don't know. I swear I knew where that came from, but
is Nike the same in both?
I don't know.
I think Nike is.
Because that would be a symbol of Nike then.
But it was just a thought, because I could see don't rest on your laurels fitting in the story, and then, you know, his wife chopped him up and burned them.
So. Don't rest on your laurels.
There's a little bit more, but did you have any further questions?
I don't.
That I can answer.
That's fair. I feel like there's a lot of questions that I ask that you're like, why are you like this?
Okay, so it is an ancient Greece thing because they would give out the laurels, and it was supposed to be a sign of accomplishment. So when you say don't rest on your laurels, it means don't get lazy about what you could achieve because I'm quoting this, because you're too busy basking in the memories of former glories.
I would also like to point out, don't rely on your plant genies. It's the other translation.
I didn't really have any questions, but I did have a comment. But I can let Vi go first.
Oh, I don't have any other questions. Other than, how do I get a plant genie?
I gave you the instructions and the enchantment for it, so you gotta start on that. You need a golden rake and a golden bucket and a silk cloth, I believe.
Can they be gold plated, or do they need to be gold, like solid gold, or can they just
I
be gold
do not know.
painted?
Fairy tales are not that specific. I think it has to have the metal on it, though. I don't think it can be painted, but maybe. No idea.
But yeah, I was just gonna say that in the version that I'm familiar with, he uses a cloak instead of a flower to turn invisible. How he got it, I don't remember.
Harry
Fairy
Potter.
tales, man. No answers.
But I do remember him having a cloak. But in that version, I think it was only 3 days that he watches them, and then on the third day, he himself goes to the king and tells the king what happened, and then like presents the things that he took from the area. So
I think that's the version I remember.
And then like something from the actual castle, like a piece of silverware, like something to show like these are the three different, like this is the way that we went or whatever.
Yeah,
that's very
familiar.
Very similar to the version I remember. There was something about a drink and tricking a drink, and then the cloak. And then I remember a silver branch because like the forest was made of silver trees. That's what I specifically remember.
I don't remember what they were made of. He like every day he went there, he took something different back to present.
So our stories from our childhood are actually like a mismatch of this version and Grimm. So, which is, I was going to describe Grimm just ever so briefly because, weirdly enough, since this French tale it's just more fucked up than Grimm, so I thought it would be nice to just like give a brief synopsis. It is very, very similar. It kind of follows the same path, but it's far more generic. Obviously, they don't give names to people, and it starts immediately off with the princess's problem of shoes, which I guess the king is just annoyed at buying. But the princesses in the Grimm version also drug the princes. And so the king sets a thing out there that says a prince can come and try to solve this mystery. You have 3 days to do it. And if you don't solve it in 3 days, you're executed. You get beheaded.
Yeah, that's what I
The beheaded was conveniently left out of my childhood version.
I knew there was like a 3-day limit. Like the 3 days was important.
Right. And so like a bunch of princes came and a bunch of princes died because no one could figure this out. And it turns out it's because the princesses are drugging the princes. So actually that still is pretty fucked up, but I feel like, bewitched man slaves are just a little worse than just executing people. I don't know. Maybe this is preference on levels of fucked upness, but for me, this execution isn't as bad. But so this guy, this commoner, comes and somehow realizes what they're doing. Oh, he's warned by somebody. And so this is the funny part. He ties a sponge under his chin, which is probably what one thing. He ties a sponge under his chin, and so when he drinks from the glass, he doesn't let any of it go in his mouth. It runs down his chin and soaks into the sponge. And I'm just like, how does no one notice?
I was just getting ready to ask that. Like, how does nobody say, like, whoa, bro, get your face checked?
Because, first of all, yeah, you're going to have this thing tied around your head. And the princesses stay until he drinks the drink. So I'm just like, someone's got to know. And it was like drip, so it's going to be like, I don't know.
Must have been white wine.
Anyway, and then it kind of follows the same thing where he follows them for 3 days, and on the third day, he's like, behold, branch, and king is like, mystery solved, choose a wife. And that's pretty much the end.
So in the Grimm version, does he still pick the youngest princess?
I don't remember. I actually don't remember it specifying. probably.
She's still the youngest, but
You should always choose the eldest because that's the heir, people. But part of the deal in the Grimm is that the kingdom would then be passed off to that guy, so you could choose whichever princess you wanted.
I was going to say, but it doesn't like explicitly say that there are no princes. It just says that there are 12 princesses.
That's very true. But in Grimm,
they probably have a brother that's going to inherit everything.
In Grimm, it specifically says that whoever solves the mystery gets the kingdom as well. So like, so that commoner then becomes king and marries a princess. It's very, very similar. But like I said, I think the Red Fairy story is so much worse. So much slavery, so many frozen hearts. It's weird. But if no one has anything else, I'll just do an outro.
Well, what's the moral?
Oh, don't be a creeper. What's my moral? Don't be a creeper? Or don't drink some wine?
Yeah, I was gonna say, being a creeper gets in the kingdom. I think it should be don't take drinks from people you don't know.
Yeah. Don't leave your drink unattended. Every lady knows this rule. Don't leave your drink unattended.
I feel like that's like real advice.
Yeah.
Like, if we're going with like classic fairy tale advice, it's get yourself some laurels and then grow them to roughly the height of a 15-year-old girl.
I think I can add the moral I've carried over to almost every story. If you find yourself in a weird magic-looking place, nope the hell on out of there.
Yeah. All of your places do involve magical places. I don't understand.
No, imagine you have jewel-encrusted trees. Let the princesses go across the lake and do their weird thing. You fill your pockets with leaves and gold-encrusted branches, and you get out of there and you go have yourself a nice life.
That's so valid. You could just buy the kingdom.
Why go through the trouble?
Right, like cut down the fucking trees.
Can you imagine? They're dancing, and when it come back, you just have this guy like sawing at a tree. No, guys, keep going. This is fine. We're fine. I'll catch up later.
Yeah,
I could be invisible, and then the tree's just being hacked away invisibly.
That I like. That would be terrifying. They'd be like,
Ghost axe.
Deuces, I'm out of here. No bueno.
We're gonna have such a weird compilation of morals at the end of the year.
And then I guess at the very end we have to do which is our favorite. Because that's gonna be important.
Ooh, which is our favorite and which is the most relevant to real life?
Don't leave your drink unattended.
Don't leave your drink unattended, and do not take drinks from strangers unless you saw the bartender pour it and it immediately then went to you.
Yeah, that's the most, I think, important to real life. Favorite though? That's gonna be a hard one.
I mean,
we still have plenty of episodes
we still
to
have
get
a lot of episodes.
I know.
I'll
be like, I don't want to play favorites and pick one of my own, but you know.
But also, mine are the best.
I don't know. Don't take swords from watery tarts. It's pretty far up there.
I mean, it was our first moral. It was a good moral.
It was valid.
I also enjoy throw your baby onto the fire. But that's not a good one to follow in real life.
I mean, it depends on whether or not you'd like to keep your baby.
I still feel like we shouldn't say that.
we here at Fucked Up Fables do not, in fact, condone child murder.
I'm going to I didn't even put a trigger warning. Trigger warning, potential rape allegory. That's about it. At the end of the story.
You're gonna have to like edit that into the beginning of the video.
If I remember. I should do that.
You should.
So yeah, this isn't as fucked up as some of our other baby and fireplace stories in Q, but I don't know.
At me, okay?
I think it's still, I'm telling you, the classics, when you think about the time period, classics are just a nightmare. I love it. I love fairy tales. I never would read that to a child.
I would.
I think it's weird. I'll stick with my cute little softback books from forever ago until they're old enough to understand that you don't take drinks from strangers.
Until they're old enough to understand that it's also morally wrong to drug strangers.
What if that puts it into the child's head that it's okay to do it, and no matter how much you try to correct them, they're like, nah, I'm still gonna drug and keep people, and then they do it.
See, I can't be a part of this because I tell Greek myths to Amy all the time.
You're fine.
I feel like
So
if your child is drugging and keeping people, you should get them help.
So, like, I have this, like, really obscure, like, fear in the back of my head that my own children will murder me, and so that's probably why I'm like, keep them happy.
It's statistically far more likely that you would murder your own children.
Very true, but kids are creepy as fuck, and they like to just randomly, like, creep down the hallway and stand at the foot of your bed in pitch dark and just stand there and watch you sleep.
No.
They don't say anything, they don't do anything, they just stand there. And
Not
then
for
you
me.
like, wake up and you're like, I feel like something's watching me, and then you look and you're like, holy shit, and they're like, Mommy, and you're like, God, why?
So there is like an entire like internet list of like creepy ass things that kids have done that I've read multiple times because I think it's hysterical. And there's just like, a similar situation, except the kid is just like, Daddy, I'm going to take your face off. But like, no explanation, just I'm going to take your face.
Bonus episode. We read creepy children things.
My favorite was the story of this woman who bought her kid like glow in the dark Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pajamas, but just like the face lit up, like nothing else, just like the mouth and the forehead. And the kid came into her room in the middle of the night, didn't say anything, just came into the room and then just like started climbing onto the bed to get into bed with him. So she woke up because she felt the bed move, and all she sees is the glow in the dark face. And she was like, I was utterly terrified and prepared for God to take me because I was going to die. And she's like, never again will I buy glow in the dark clothes. I was like, that's good advice, thanks. Let me never do.
So that's the 12 Dancing Princesses. The original French tale was weirdly more fucked up than Grimm, which was completely unexpected. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're listening to the podcast, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel to see our lovely faces at F***CKED up fables. So fucked up where the U is an asterisk. If you're check out our Facebook group for episode updates and behind the scenes images. That is FCKED up fables because we have to be unique in everything that we do. And tune in next week when Inky Doo will be taking us through another tale. Is it you? Is it Vi?
I thought it was me too.
Oh, I'm wrong. So Vi, do you want to give us a hint?
No, because I haven't decided yet.
You sound like you. It's okay.
So I was never big into fairy tales as a kid, actually. And I even like reached out to my mom and was like, "Hey, Mom, which stories did you read me like as a kid?" And she was like, you liked like the Magic Treehouse books and the Pokey Little Puppy and Toodles the Train. So I was like I never got into the whole fairy tale thing because I jumped like straight from like those things to like dinosaurs, which were my jam as a kid.
Dope.
So I guess tune in next time to see if you solve this dilemma.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I have to pick a story that wasn't like a childhood story necessarily, but is a story that I know. So,
it works.
Yeah. A typical childhood story. See, mine is going to be the opposite. Mine is not a typical childhood story, but I learned it in my childhood.
So I guess then tune in to watch us continue to fuck up our own childhood memories and leave them sad and lonely behind.
Yeah, I suggested doing the Ugly Duckling, and E and T both were like, no. They're like, that's not a fairy tale. And I was like, but it is fucked up. A little, kind of.
That's stretching it. I
They
mean,
bullied the duckling because he's ugly. That is fucked up, okay?
to be fair, it's gonna be really hard for me to fuck up this story. I did deep dive hardcore into the history of it. I went a little crazy with it. So I was like, it's so interesting. But like, the worst thing that happens is some people die. Like,
No baby fire in the fire?
nope,
No
it's just
tossing
murder.
babies into the...
Not even rape or attempted rape. It's just murder.
This doesn't sound very fucked up, Inky Doo.
I'm
I think I'm sad. I think I want more terrible, awful, like, baby throwing stories or something.
Noted. I will find something particularly horrendous for you.
sorry.
That
To
would
be fair, mine is really fucking sad. So
I
Is it The
have never...
Fox and the Hound? Because that's one of the saddest stories from my childhood.
The first 10
No.
minutes of Up is equally as sad.
no, it involves someone losing their soulmate and then having to go the rest of their life, um, having to go the rest of their life preventing their own death, only to find out that you can't avoid death.
It's happening!
It's really ambiguous, but that's basically
Anyway, that's all I have.
that. Okay.
Bye.